Oh, well, good evening. It's, the wind is just howling out there. I wish I had a better phone that could do it justice because all of the snow is blowing off the field. And as soon as it hits a snowbank, it like ramps up and then, it's shoots over and it's making huge drifts and waves and stuff like that. It's actually pretty neat. But I don't think you can see it with my phone coming off the field there. But you can sure hear it. So anyways, I came up here gonna get the eggs. I just switched out the water. This is our chicken coop, and I wanted to weigh my 2 cents in. So I'm about 3 weeks late. I realize that, to the egg dilemma of facing North America and no egg production. But in order to understand egg production on a specific farm, you kind of have to understand it all. So this is our chicken coop. It's an old granary converted. They put a little area upstairs there for some extra storage. And then they built this room inside of the chicken coop. It is very well insulated. The roof is insulated. All the walls are insulated. That's actually an overhead door panel insulated that we can open up the bottom, let the chickens out. We normally leave it open. It's just the wind and everything. It's been so cold and brutal that we just kind of shut it because they don't go out anyways. We are doing that deep bedding litter method. So that's a piled up there. And it's keeping this place nice and warm. All the walls are insulated. That light's on a switch. That light's on a timer. I believe it turns on at 4, off at 11. And I've had that on kind of all winter. This is kind of water thing that we use. We have to basically clean it every day. But, whatever, it works. And these feeders were what we were using, but with the chickens all cooped up in here all the time, and they scratch around so much that they usually fill them full of shavings. So we don't use those in the winter. There was one for oyster shells, one for grit, one for, I think there was buckwheat in one, a couple that were full of feed. I don't know what was even in the last one. Now I just dump it into here. I bring a pail up. I dump in some sunflowers, like a cup of sunflowers, and then I just fill this up with feed. The feed that we feed is the feed that we make ourselves. It's 40% peas, 40% wheat, 10% canola, 5% oats, 5% barley. Then, of course, we dump the table scraps and stuff for them to pick at. These are the nesting box she chose to build and go with. Just buckets with a little lip. Works pretty well. And out of, I think there's 13 hens in here and a couple of roosters. But out of all of that, we're getting basically, what's in here? Seven eggs. So there's 7 eggs today. I think she's been getting between 7 and 9. So I think that's kind of awesome. I'm certainly not a person that thinks that you're going to get 1 egg a day per chicken, 365 days a year. I don't even know if that's possible. So in regards to the feed, now that you see our whole setup, we did go about 6 weeks there before Christmas where we weren't getting any eggs. That was right there through the molt, and it was probably longer than it should have been, but we had some pretty rough weather then too. So we didn't change up the feed aside from adding those oyster shells. Those normally aren't in there, or sorry, not the oyster shells, the sunflower seeds. We grew those on our farm ourselves this year, and we've been using those for some supplemental oil, energy, fat, things like that. And soon after, once we got the light figured out properly, and we got the water heater in there, and we got the sunflowers going, and the oyster shells, and had it all cleaned up, and started piling up that bedding. The chickens all started getting comfortable again after the molt and everything like that. Then they started laying again. So I'm not sure when that was. My timelines are all a bit fuzzy because the chickens really are not my whole thing. That's usually somebody else is doing all of this. And so we were getting, I don't know, quite a few. Maybe she was getting 10 or whatever a day for a while there, and then we had some really extreme fluctuations in the weather, and then we kind of have dropped off now to between, like I say, that 7 and 9, which to me is totally acceptable. We don't use any other stuff from town, so we don't buy laying mash, we don't buy any of that stuff. I'm sure if you did, you would definitely increase your production some, but I'm happy and good with the way this is going. The way we feed all of our animals is more of a, I guess, a traditional way. I do a lot of research when people phone and ask me to make blends for them, and I always just think to, what did they do 30 years ago? What did they do 40 years ago? 40 years ago, they weren't feeding pellets. They were feeding just cracked wheat to their chickens, and they all survived and life was good. So that's what we do, and we don't really encounter any extremes. So we did go through probably a longer molt. You know, what would it have been? November, December-ish, October, somewhere in there. There was a basically 6 to 8 week window. I can't remember how long it was exactly, where we got like maybe 1 egg a day. Sometimes we didn't get any eggs. It did get frustrating, and we did consider cooking all these in the pot, but whatever. We waited it out like everybody else, and we did our best. We kept the water clean. We kept stacking up the shavings. We kept the nesting boxes clean, kept the feeders full, tried to keep the feed as consistent as possible, and then bang, we pulled out of it. So as far as the global thing or the North American thing, do I think that any of this was by design? Not at all. I don't think there's anybody anywhere tampering with the feed, adding anything to the feed to make your chicken stop laying. I think it was just kind of maybe a phenomena that happened this year that a lot of people experienced. There certainly could have been something happen during the growing season of the actual crop itself, the seeds itself, the wheat, the corn, the whatever you're using, that maybe could have changed it from past years, because we did encounter a couple of years here of some pretty aggressive drought and some pretty aggressive harvesting conditions as well. So that could play a factor. But I don't think any of this is done by design. As far as feed goes, I also don't think you can really go wrong with any feed within reason. So it doesn't really matter, I don't think, where you're buying it from. If you're buying it from a local farmer, from a local mill, from a big mill, from a national company, I'm sure it's probably all fine. One thing that I've been hearing quite a bit of is, oh, I switched my feed and then it started working. Well, a lot of times when you switch, the shock alone will change what was happening. And that's not exclusive to chickens. We notice it with 4-H steers. Sometimes these animals will go off the feed. They change something up. They add some oats, they add some peas, they add some molasses, they add whatever. And then bang, the animals go right up and they start eating more even or whatever. So this can happen, just changing the feed. And that doesn't mean the feed you were feeding was no good. It just means that you changed the feed, right? So you let that play out for long enough and you'll most likely find that you might have to change back again. Of course, the nature of growing crops, no really two crop seasons are identical, so you could have those fluctuations, but that's my 2 cents of it all, I guess. I don't think it's all done. I don't think any of it's done by design. And I think if you did wait 5 months, 6 months before you raised the question that your chickens weren't laying, I don't think that was good either. I think you probably should have hopped on that basically after about the 8-week mark. You should have been figuring out what you needed. And in most cases, I think it was a little bit more energy, probably a little bit more protein. Our chicken feed is 15% protein. We've sent it out to be tested. We have a lot of people that use it, and we have a lot of people that use it year round. We even use it for the chicks. We don't use chick starter. We don't use anything like that. We just use this, and there's enough small fines in it that chicks do well on it. There's enough big coarse seeds that the bigger chickens do well on it. Also, back to being more of a trying to feed things a little more traditionally than some people do. I've read once that if a chicken is fed more normal grains earlier on and more coarse grains or bigger grains, the crop and the gizzard, that all develops stronger, and you can actually, you can almost do without grit and things like that, because the chicken is strong enough to handle it anyways. And of course, a stronger animal will be like a healthier animal and a more efficient animal. So that's kind of part of the reason why I don't think that some people have such issues with egg production and things like that. I doubt I'm going to be able to keep my phone running here once I hop into the wind tunnel between the animals and the house. So that's going to be it for me. I'm going to go in, start making some supper. So as always, thanks for watching. If you have any chicken questions, throw them in the comments. I'm not a chicken expert by any means. I consider myself somewhat of an amateur livestock feed expert because of all the people that I talk to about it. And I know a lot of people that watch this channel are, wow, that's my name, almost chicken experts. So somebody can answer your question. as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one.